I'm going to give folks just another minute or so, and then we'll get started.
No.
I'll send you a copy of it if you want to read. Um,
All right, I think we can go ahead and get started here. Share my screen. All right, so this is a continuation of discussions we've been having around sort of strategic initiatives to help move e-NABLE forward, address key challenges, and put our funding to good use. And so that's an important part of getting further funding, showing that we've made an impact with what we've received so far. So we've talked about a lot of things, and I've had a lot of notes here, but I'm going to skip right down to the end, which is the kind of the specific budgets that we've been talking about for specific initiatives. So there's a roughly $11,000 budget that we've discussed for building out this new website and matching platform. Discussion has been going on Lumio. Comments have all been positive so far. And I think it's time that we switch that to voting. I will clarify, and I mentioned this in the last meeting, Morgan has coordinated 2 meetings now over the last couple of weeks since our previous meeting for all of those who expressed interest in this project. In other words, all of these individuals listed here in the proposal. Unfortunately, only Morgan and myself and Jonathan were able to make it to those meetings. So that tells us that perhaps these other individuals might not have a lot of time to contribute. We don't really know right now. So some of the tasks that, maybe would have been handled by these other individuals, might shift over to being handled by contractors. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really change our proposed budget because we were suggesting that we'd pay $30 an hour for the volunteers involved and pay $25 an hour for contractors. So it's going to be about the same in either case. We just might shift more of the work over to contractors. So I think at this point we should probably just go ahead and turn on the voting. Morgan, do you have any thoughts on that or other comments here?
Nope, sorry, I was trying to find the mute button. Um, I was telling Jeremy yesterday that I do have a lead on a bunch of contractors that would actually fit the bill for this quite well. Ironically, they're from my old job, but they are about to be let go. I've heard through the grapevine. So in the next week or so, I'm going to reach out to them. They are in Georgia. I don't know how good their French is. That's the one downside, but I know they're very good at PHP, um, and a lot of front end stuff. And they would do it for $25 an hour.
And
But
I think
yeah,
I think having people that you're familiar with and their work quality and they're
they
available
are
for the rate we're looking
workhorses.
for, I think that's a big plus. So
My only worry with them is they don't stop working. Um,
all
so
right,
I'm
well that'll
worried
be for
they'll
you
go
to
up over the
monitor.
allotted amount. Yeah, that's my
Exactly.
that's my one worry. But they are it it's crazy how much they work.
Okay.
Um, and they produce good work. So I think the way I'm going to handle that is say, hey, you have X amount of hours,
Right.
and then we'll reevaluate.
Yeah, I mean, I
But
think you just need to make sure they understand that this is not a big company with lots of money. This is a volunteer
yeah,
nonprofit organization, and we do have a set kind of budget for this and would have to get approval from the community beyond that.
yeah.
But
And this next coming week, I'm gonna talk to my brother who was at that old company as well, see how best to bridge this because I don't want to get in like I don't want them to think I'm poaching their employees. So
right.
um
Well,
I
so what I would suggest, Morgan, is that you in Lumio go ahead and you can go ahead and edit this to add, make any changes. And I think just in our section here where we're naming, people responsible, I would just add some notes saying that, some of these listed team members might have limited availability, in which case we would use contractors instead. And you can add a note that you have people that that do good work that will work for that rate. And I think once you add that note there, then I think we go ahead and turn on the voting. And if you need any help with that, we can help you, but it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
You just, where is it down? I don't remember where you do that. John, where do you actually start the voting from? I'm not, oh, so you go to decision, right? And then proposal, and these have changed. So what are we using now? Is it consensus, John, or is it?
A regular poll, I think.
But I don't see any option here they all have different names now.
The
Oh,
second
okay.
task.
Yeah.
So you want simple poll? Is that what we're using?
I think so.
How many of these options may the voter choose? One choice, and then you add options. Okay. I mean, I don't really understand. They changed this. It used to be standard options that they had set up, for agree, disagree, abstain, or whatever, but I'm not seeing that now. What does consensus look like? Oh, I think this is what we've used, John. Okay, consensus, because there's our standard options: agree, abstain, disagree, and block.
Well, this one specifies, I see that you need a majority. So I think the point is this is off the shelf. I think there probably is an option that we can tune to.
But this is what our policy for voting is based on this, because we specifically have language about how to handle disagree and abstain and block votes.
I agree, but look at the first sentence visible on your screen. For this proposal to pass, we need a majority. So you're going to want to.
I think that's just a comment there, John.
Oh,
That's an editable piece of text. So
gold.
yeah. So I think this is what you use, Morgan. Just set it up as a consensus proposal.
Sounds good.
And then we'll get the voting going. That has to run
I
for
will
at
do that
least.
today, and my goal is to really flush out that Trello board. So when we do
Okay.
get the contractors and stuff,
Okay.
really flush it out.
So you'll set this up as a proposal for consensus, and it needs to run for at least 10 days. So when you set the closing date, it defaults to 7 days. Make sure you set it for at least 10 days out.
Got it.
All right. And then notify everyone. And yeah, we'll get it going. And I think we'll see that approved. Okay. So that's the one initiative, which I think we're very close to getting going then. And then the next initiative is the outreach coordination proposal that Madison put together, which I think also probably needs to go to voting now, because all the comments I've seen were positive. I know Kyle had some comments and suggestions, but essentially it looks like folks are on board. So unless anybody has any other thoughts here, I think this is ready to go to a proposal as well. So who's in contact with Madison these days? Is that you, John, or Sarah? Who would?
Yeah.
Who do we have dialed
What
in
is
by
this?
phone?
I'm sorry.
You need to turn off
I
your
think we're
computer
okay now.
speaker. Okay, now it's gone. All right, so yeah, Sarah, if you want to maybe just tell Madison that it's probably time to start the voting process and use the proposal by consent option, set it for 10 days.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right. So we'll have 2 of those going for votes. And then by the next time we meet, hopefully we'll have the decisions on those, which I think will be positive. And then there's a new one that we just handled in our previous meeting today, and it was. We're getting an echo again, John. Go ahead and mute your phone. Sorry. All right, so yeah, in our previous meeting, John presented a plan for building out a big map, which is a global map that has pins all over it that highlight success stories, case studies, with links to media and details. And it's something that has been built out already for the Eco Restoration Alliance, and we want to build one for e-NABLE. He has a candidate already to do the development who's proven and has done work for him and provided a good proposal. $1,000 will cover the initial phase for basically building a wireframe. And there will be further phases that will need separate budgeting and approval. But we all voted in the town hall meeting, and by a vote, that $1,000 was already approved because we have that discretionary approval up to $1,000. So that one's already off and running. So I just included it here as something that we are funding. And that will tie in nicely to some of these other efforts because that's going to help, for example, Jason with the fundraising and the grant applications he's doing. It'll be a way of directing people to there to show kind of the further impacts that we're having and see what people are doing around the world. And speaking of impact, that leads us into the next one that we wanted to discuss. One of the tools Jason needs in order to go after these grants successfully is we need kind of a 1 or 2 pager that just really conveys in a very meaningful way who we are, what we do, and the impact that we have, and just kind of really presents e-NABLE in a very compelling way. And this is something that Sarah has already built in the past for other sort of like-minded organizations. She showed us an example of a beautiful PDF, and I think it's just the kind of thing that we need. So the idea here is to talk about moving forward with that as a funded project. And you'll notice here that I left the dollars as question marks because I don't really have a good sense. This is where we need some guidance from you, Sarah, of what kind of an effort we're talking about here. And I don't know whether you can put that into hours or dollars or, whatever, but maybe start us off on that discussion, Sarah, what your thoughts are to get that done.
Yeah, I can definitely put together a proposal. I think I would love to have some input from the community on like how in depth you would want to go and how much you want included. I know that there are before getting into costs of time and hours that it would take the software to put this together, to transcribe interviews from people, and if we're also going to be looking at layout of photos and text, that's Adobe InDesign. So there are those software costs. And then the example that I showed you for that was done for Water Aid Cambodia, and that took that came out of months of research and photography and in-person interviews with people who were affected, sort of documenting people's lives and initiatives, and then it also involved a really thorough, part of it was a thorough literature review to get a sense of the scope of the problem and to put into context why the organization was so necessary and what it was doing. So for e-NABLE, for this, do you just want this to be entirely remote interviews, capturing different stories of what's been done? Should part of it be like a history of burden of limb differences, or for any of this, do you want like in-person storytelling or interviewing or photos, or would that just be something that like people can send in and I can, select things?
Yeah, I can see this going a few different ways, right? I like something I think many of the use cases may be something simple and effective, but considering this in a longer term approach where we can do this to a, here's the result of a targeted success story. Obviously those go a lot more into detail. It just depends on the story we're wanting to tell, and if we're wanting this for an immediate attention grabber versus and I'm only looking at this through the lens of a grant application, but I can see the value of something like a yearly newsletter of, hey, here's a big success story from the year. So I can see that as being a multi-phase project. Jeremy, if you wouldn't mind, if I can share the screen very quickly.
Yep, of course.
Let's see, host disabled participant screen sharing.
It's on now.
Okay. Let's see. Just an example of what Ugani had shared after, this was months and months ago. You could see this was 2022, but as far as their version of a one pager of, hey, here's the folks that we impact, and here's how we do it. And it's just pops of color, quick visual appeal, and it's not a 30-minute read by any stretch. It's something eye-catching, and it shows that we've got, some marketing source behind our materials. Now the magic to get there, Sarah, I'm not gonna pretend I know the technology or the work effort behind it,
that's great. I'm not a graphic designer at all.
Right.
I can take photographs and I can
Sure.
write and I can put those things together, but something like that, and all of those graphics, I think we would want someone with some graphic design experience on board.
Yeah, and it may be something like a, even paying for some graphic design templates, or some of the stock, I don't know what you call these, stock graphics, but then including some of our own photos from the website. It could be a combination of things, but I'm trust the experts here. And just giving you guys an idea of if we wanted to roll something else into this project. And Sarah, I don't know if this is in your purview as well, but
yeah,
this
cover letter, I can definitely do also.
Okay. Yeah. So if we have a cover letter with the intention of being able to add signatures or having, John or Jeremy's signature on it as well, I think we can sort of loop that into whatever cost we're allocating towards this.
Okay.
And then as far as the one pager, I'm just using, there's always a place for additional files. And I think a one pager just checks the box on a broad scale. Of course, I could be swayed there as well.
Jason, can you send me that, the link?
So this one is actually, we had to go through an approval to get into this portal. So it's assigned to my email and
Okay.
Or did
and
you mean
log in, but
did you mean the sample he showed us, Sarah?
No, I can get that.
Okay.
But
I can send you some screenshots of what they're looking
okay.
for.
Yeah.
All right. So it sounds like, Sarah, you probably want to start kind of drafting a proposal based on what we're thinking. You might need further clarification of requirements, but I think some of that might actually come from that discussion process on Lumio. So it might be best to just kind of try to get it out there, even if it's just kind of ballpark figures of, ranges of costs and efforts until we get further clarification. We'll at least get the discussion going and start getting some clarifying, details on what we're trying to build here.
Okay, I can do that.
Great. All right, so then the only other one we've really talked about specifically, which I think comes a little later, is that it probably makes sense to think about hiring an actual, professional digital marketing and PR firm. I think we at the very least have to get the new website done first, because any successful marketing campaign is going to have to direct people somewhere where they can, really learn about us, and it's going to get them engaged and compel them to want to get involved or support us. And I just don't think we have that, right place to send them right now. So I think it's going to be very important to do some actual marketing to get the word out there, because at the end of the day, I think our biggest challenge right now as a community is building that pipeline of people in the actual indifferent community, building the awareness so that they know that we're here, they can come and they can, request devices. We have way more volunteers wanting to help right now than we have people asking for devices. So I think the digital marketing will help with that, but we need that site up to have some place to send them first. So does anybody else have any further thoughts on that? I know we just put a ballpark budget down. That may or may not be what it ends up being. But I think the point is we could afford with our current funding to hire a professional firm for this when the time is right. Thoughts from anyone?
No,
I think that's spot on.
Okay.
and just a reference to really drive home the need. I've only ran across this once, but it was 2023. There was a grant application process that was they gave standard flat 20K grants every time, but their initial screening was put your website here, we'll look through it and get back to you. So just solidifying that, hey, this is one of the first stops that people are going to go to.
Yeah, and so I think having that site that really clearly lays things out, shows who we are, what we do, what impact we've had. It's going to be a multilingual site, which I think really talks to our global arrangement, our organization. I think that's going to go a long way to support these efforts. So, all right. Well, so these are the initiatives we talked about so far. Now, I have a kind of a question, sort of logistical question here. Before I go into that, let me just ask if anyone else here has any other topics that we should be discussing, other initiatives that you think should be on the roadmap here for talking about things for funding in the near future? Anyone?
So I was as far as initiatives for funding, there's two aspects of that, right? There's the applications, and then there's the overall visibility. So when it comes to some of those visibility components, there is a space that we haven't. I'm gonna steal the screen one more time for it from you here, but there is a space that we haven't captured. It's just where my mind hasn't really gone there. Rather than straight up foundation and grant applications, I was doing some background research there, and there's a lot of visibility in humanitarian awards. That does go with having a big name out there and a very recognizable name. But these are some of the things that we could start pursuing. Now, I haven't done a full background to see if we're there, but kind of plotted out where we sort of fit in with these guys. And I think working the award cycle is might be where it might be worth a shift in focus there, as far as what the things we're searching for. And he's kind of just keep going. I think at a number of examples here, but I think that alone will help increase our visibility. And then anything else in as far as the fundraising process, once we decide, I'm thinking social media management is well worth the expenditure. Whether you call that a marketer, I know we had discussed that a couple of times, but we also have the opportunity to be able to leverage the good work that others have done. So we look at some social media presence targets. I think we've got an easy way of, whether that's a financial incentive of, hey, do this, and maybe have a paid promotion from some of these folks. I would highly recommend Giles Dooley. or at the very least, once we get our website and some of our social media reach expanding a little bit further, I think connecting with anyone on this list would be very valuable as far as increasing our voice and awareness.
Great. Okay, well, so let me just ask a question here, and this is a long shot, but it occurred to me that, you know, our town hall meetings, which precede this meeting on Fridays, have been running a little bit short, actually. For the last couple of weeks, we've been finished in about 30 to 40 minutes. And these meetings are also getting to the point where it's really, we're moving more in the direction of kind of having a status update and touching base on where we are at with each of these initiatives and just figuring out next steps. It might make sense to kind of bring these together, and instead of having two separate meetings, just allocate, you know, a portion of our time during the town halls to go through these initiatives and talk about status and next steps. I don't know if that works for everyone here in terms of scheduling, though. That meeting, like I said, precedes this one. It's an hour earlier. Um, any thoughts on whether we would be able to kind of have you guys join us for those town hall meetings and cover some of this there?
For me.
Yeah, for me, it would be a lot easier to stitch them together.
Okay. Anybody opposed to that? Think that it makes more sense to keep these separate?
We're pretty, I mean, we're pretty transparent when it comes to the budget, where we're allocating, and we're community voting anyway. So some of these
Exactly.
finer details of working through the budget is.
And it really, it really is the intent of the town hall meetings is to talk about initiatives like this. The only reason we were doing this separately is because we needed more time than we could allot within the town hall meeting. But I think we're at a point now where we could probably handle this discussion, you know, on an ongoing basis as part of our town hall meetings, which happen every 2 weeks on Friday, or
Yep.
I guess it's the first and third Friday of each month, not every 2 weeks. So I'm not hearing any objections. Why don't we plan to do that going forward? So Sarah, that's one less meeting for you to set up. We can just coordinate the town hall, and I'll update the agenda to just include this discussion as part of the town hall agenda.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay. Anybody else have anything that you'd like to discuss today? Otherwise, I think we have some good next steps here for our initiatives.
Yeah, so just on my end, I know we still have the one pager and that'll impact the cytokinetics, but Jeremy, wanted to get your thoughts on an overall process of you know, I talked about using the cytokinetics grant as an example of, hey, let's all input and make sure we're on point when it comes to the messaging. Is there a space that you would suggest where I can post like the proposed budgets, my proposed responses to these blanks? What's the best platform that we can get multiple eyes on a proposed grant response?
That's tricky. I mean, ideally, it should be the hub, and there would be, I think we even already have a space. I don't know, I'd have to look to, for, you know, things like grants or no, it's not grants, funding. Well, we have e-NABLE fundraising as a space. The problem is, you know, getting people to actually look in there and use it. I can see we have 9 members, 11 followers. I mean, we haven't done a good job of actually getting people to go into these sort of subspaces and participate. It might be, I mean, one option is we make use of this space, make use of the fundraising space, post your materials in here, but then in the main forum, post a thread saying, hey, I'd love to get people's input on this, and give them a link over to that space. You know, I don't think people are just going to find their way there, but
That
maybe,
that
yeah.
makes sense. And it's a personal knowledge gap. I haven't played around much with the creation of spaces or posting in the hub in general. So
I mean, I'd say use what we already have here. And what I can do is I see Adam is already in here. Let's add you, Jason,
okay.
or actually, how does that work? It's not, is it remove? No, how do we add a member? Okay. Oh, invite. Okay. So let's get you in here, Jason. Innocent, add without invitation, send, and then I can make you an admin here so that you can make changes and such if you'd like to.
Perfect.
Um, I think the spaces are a little bit confusing. I don't see them used very often, but when they are, things that are posted there are often ignored. So I've seen like new members introduce themselves in the new members space, but they're not then welcomed because everyone isn't going and looking at the new members space. So I think, if we're going to try to use spaces, we should, like, every time someone uses it, they should also be posting in the hub to direct people to what
Yeah.
they're doing in that space. Otherwise, there's
Yeah.
no point in using them at all. They're just like hidden posts.
I
Would it-
agree. I think I mean, for something like this, I think it makes sense just because there might be more of a discussion, there might be more materials involved. It makes sense to have that, out of the main forum thread, but I agree that there should then be a short thread in the main forum just to say, hey, please go look at this and share your comments, and then they can go find all the details in the fundraising space.
Yeah, potentially a bad idea, but would it be worthwhile to spend 5 minutes on the next call, just giving an overview of how the spaces work and general navigation for new members?
We can do that. I don't know how much of an impact it's going to have, only because it's just kind of the nature of how the hub works. People
Yeah.
don't see that in their main feed, and they're not going to go looking for it usually.
Right.
But yes,
Okay.
we can touch on that in the next town hall, maybe. It would also be good to touch on that in the new members meetup on the 17th.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So then let's give this a try. Next time, which will be 2 weeks out on the next town hall meeting, we'll kind of merge this in to the town hall for discussion. Terry, I think I saw your hand up too. Did you have a comment? You gotta unmute. You gotta unmute, Terry. We're not hearing you. Terry, we're not hearing you. You gotta unmute.
Yes, sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry I was late. I had a busy day and I have a request that might be totally off topic. So just bounce me if it's off topic. We delivered this morning 220 hens
Oh,
to
wow.
a company that bought them from us. It's a global company. It's a division of a global company that works with nuclear energy, and the global group is called Freycinet. I don't know if you heard of it, but anyway, they operate in many countries, and they are very hot on what we do, and they ask us to find us to provide them with reliable contacts in different countries and in emerging countries. So I have a list of 7 countries like Czech Republic, Sweden, Germany, etc., that they require a chapter contact, and I'm not sure I can provide all of them. So who should be my preferred contact in the US in the organization to request for that, and also who can give me contact in emerging countries.
Well, I don't think anyone here really has any special authority for that, Terry, but what we do have that I think makes sense here is, and you're aware of this, on the hub, I would just point you to the chapters map.
Yeah, unfortunately, many of them are just dormant or dummy chapters that do not exist really.
Okay, so I was thinking that you already had specific chapters in mind, in which case I would say just, go to that chapter and you'll find their contact details for the chapter leader on the map. But if you're looking for recommendations for which chapters might be good to use for this, I guess, I don't know. I'm thinking John Schill might be a good one to ask. He seems to be more in tune with what some of those chapters are doing certainly more than
Okay.
me.
Okay,
Sarah,
so basically, this is the information we have.
yeah, I mean,
Okay.
other than what's in John's head, or Sarah might be another good contact here. Sarah has a good sense of what some of the chapters are doing. But yeah, I don't have any other good resource to point you to,
Okay.
other than the chapter map, unfortunately.
Okay, no problem.
Sarah, can you think of anything else that might help Terry for that? Sarah, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. No, not off the top of my head right now, but I can follow up with you in email.
That'd be
I-
great. See if we can figure anything out. I know John is having some audio issues today, but he might still be listening in which case maybe he can reach out with any suggestions for good chapters to work with too. Okay,
Okay.
I think that's all I have. Anybody else have any other topics to discuss? Okay, well, let's wrap this one up then. We've got a couple of good next steps as far as getting voting going on our 2 active proposals. We've already got a third that was already approved, and Sarah's going to work on drafting a fourth. So really good progress here. This is great. Thank you all for your help. And we'll see you at the next town hall meeting, hopefully.